It is an absolute pleasure to be here and to be with you and to be speaking at Halfstack after such a long time, having been at one and or spoken at one. I'm still not entirely sure on that either. My name is Nash. I'm a developer advocate for Sonar. Sonar, if you don't know, build things like SonarQube, SonarCloud, SonarLint. They're all tools that can help you make write clean code. If you want to talk to me about them, find me. I'm in purple and easy to spot. Otherwise, I'm all over the internet as Phil Nash everywhere, Mastodon, Twitter, whatever you'd like to use. I'm trying all of the social medias just in case, so maybe one sticks. Cool. So I want to talk to you today about what I think is a fancy new part of the web, something that could perhaps indeed help you build more creative and fun websites as well. So yeah, thumbs up from Alistair. Awesome. It's the View Transitions API. I'm going to dig straight into how it works because I think that's much cool. That's the best way to do it. It kind of deals with the idea of single-page application transitions and multi-page application transitions, and we'll see kind of how that works. It's slightly different either way, but the outcome tends to be the same, and that's good stuff. But if you were trying to do single-page applications, you might do something like this. There's a bit of HTML at the top here, and a link, which is there to just play the transition. Down the bottom, we've got a bit of JavaScript here that's going to it's just got some new HTML there that we're going to set as inner HTML. And what we do is grab the CSS filter, the first filter on the existing bit of HTML. Then we apply the filter. We then change out that HTML, in this case, just using inner HTML, and then we play the filter. And the filter looks a bit like this. That is a DX image transform Microsoft.blinds over a duration of 3 seconds. And it ends up looking a little bit like this here, shown in Internet Explorer 8. Yeah, no, it turns out Internet Explorer actually did invent this, actually all the way back in Internet Explorer 5, but you know how hard it is to get hold of one of those these days. Yeah, Internet Explorer invented the view transition. It's very cool. It also did it for multi-page applications as well. You just use a meta tag and provide a content with, in this case, a reveal transition, duration 2 seconds, transition number 12, which isn't particularly flexible, but definitely exists. I couldn't actually get that to work for a demo, but just remember this. Internet Explorer 8 was there doing this well before we even thought about CSS for this. So that's cool. So thank you, Internet Explorer. You invented most of the internet, and I'm out of here. All right. Obviously, can't fake that up. Let's try it again. Without using 2005's CSS, I guess. The View Transitions API. Let's start with why we might want this, because it's probably not to blind transition between pictures of a castle, however cool that looked and however slow it acted because it was running in a VM in my Internet Explorer 8. I think we've spent quite a lot of time building JavaScript frameworks to avoid a single thing, the flash of white between one page on our website and another. Now, I appreciate there are many applications that require a lot of interactivity in the front end with people, and JavaScript frameworks work very well for that. But this kind of flash of white that goes between a page load, I think has been our biggest bugbear on the web since we started moving between pages. Or at least we started having style and then moving between the pages, because 2 white pages that we used to have when there was no style was not too much of an issue. But we don't like this. It doesn't look good. Our designers don't like it. And really, it's kind of about state, right? We're trying to deal with the state of a page and moving users from one part of it to another, one part of an application to another, or a site to another. And doing that with a jarring kind of white flash in the middle of everything is awkward. And so what we do is we build our frameworks, we take over navigation, we take over data fetching, we try and control it all, just in order to make it a nice experience as we move between different parts of a site. And maybe we should stop that. I just want to show a demo of what that might look like right now. I've got this terrible website. This is a multi-page application, not in a good way. It is indeed using the same idea as we had earlier, in which I'm just genuinely going to hit some links here, and it's just changing inner HTML inside the page. And this is a single-page application in which it is using inner HTML to just change between those things, and we have what is a quite jarring just change of stuff on the page. Fine. That's not a good experience for users. Like a jarring change like that is not good. As these images come in, they've preloaded right now, but if they weren't to, they'd probably also move things about as they were doing to. And that's not good. And so what we want to do is give the users a nice experience through our website, and that's what our View Transitions API is here to do. So we're going to look at the JavaScript. We're looking at the single-page application version of this right now. And if I bring up the code for the page, like I said, it is genuinely some HTML that's in the JavaScript, and we swap the inner HTMLs right here in this update the document function here. And each of the links just runs this update the document. And so View Transitions, if you have this thing in which we are updating the document, we're updating the HTML on the page, all we need to do is kind of wrap it in a document.startViewTransition. So we've added a function to the document object here. StartViewTransition, we pass it a function, and when we want to update things in the HTML, we pass it to StartViewTransition, and when we can do this with an asynchronous function as well. And so the browser will then, at the start of StartViewTransition, capture the page. It's going to capture the actual experience on the page. It will then run the update. It then captures the result, and then we'll attempt to animate between them. And that's cool. That's very nice. By default, what we get is a nice little crossfade. So there we go. I've added that one line around my change of update, and we get a crossfade between our things. That's quite nice. It's funny, actually, what goes into a crossfade in the web. Actually, funnily enough, it's about similar to transitioning through colors. Transitioning through images is also something that isn't entirely straightforward, but now does it. So that's cool. Let's move it on. So that's a single-page application transition. Whoop. We just update the document within the StartViewTransition function. Wonderful. What it's actually doing, as I said, is like taking that snapshot. But it does a little bit more than that, because we need access to those snapshots in order to do stuff with these transitions. And so when the View Transition API takes that snapshot, we actually end up with a sort of new tree of CSS pseudo elements, which we can deal with. We end up with a View Transition element, which sits around the whole lot and actually isolates it from the rest of the page, so we can do animations on that without worrying about the rest of the page that sat behind it. We get a View Transition group, in this case around the root, because of the entire page. We get an image pair, which then contains the View Transition old root, which is a snapshot of the old version of it, the View Transition new root, which is a snapshot of the new transition of it, the final version. And we can then apply CSS to those elements, pseudo elements themselves. It kind of, you end up with this kind of layered effect. I wanted to make CSS animations in this presentation as well. So we end up with a layered effect where that top one is indeed the incoming page, and then the second one is the old one, and then we kind of have these groups around the outside, all isolated in as one thing underneath. So let's show what we can do with that. If I go back to our code, I actually jump into the CSS, and so I have some keyframe animations already set up here. A couple of things. We're going to fade in and fade out and slide from bottom and slide up to the top. Just some really simple animations there. And if I uncomment that, we are here dealing with the old View Transition and the new one. And in this case, running an animation that's going to fade out and slide the old stuff to the top and fade in and slide up the new stuff from the bottom. So let's see what that looks like when we do that. Yeah, cool. I've broken it. Looks terrible. It turns out I'm actually fading the entire page up right now. And it's actually broken kind of what we had with our single page application, with our kind of application frame and the header and the footer that were staying. That was the state that was permanent for our page. Now we're moving everything about. The good news is we can fix those things in place. We do so by adding some extra layers. And by naming them. And so what I've taken here is just the header and the footer. And if you give those a name with the View Transition name property, then they will get their own layers in the pseudo elements that we saw earlier. We'll get extra pseudo elements just for those. And they'll attempt to move to animate just between the positions that they exist in. And so if I've changed that there and we refresh this page, we should now see that just the content does its sliding in and up. And our header and footer are now safe. They've stayed exactly where they were. So that's cool. And when we do that, once we add a view transition name to an item somewhere on the page, we end up with a whole extra group of things, an extra transition group, an extra transition image pair, an extra old, and an extra new. And so we can animate these as well. And indeed, they will actually attempt to morph between each other if they change as a page moves as well. What's quite nice about this is that you can see that actually the view transition group root and the group header are now actually siblings. And so even though the header kind of exists within the context of the entire root when you have a full HTML page, when we're doing these transitions, they exist as siblings, so they can kind of move around regardless of former hierarchical relationships. Debugging is important on this, and thankfully, we're in a world of CSS animations, and so it's actually relatively straightforward. What we can do is grab up our developer tools, and don't do that on me, and bring in the animations. Bring in the animations tab. And what we can do here is we can either slow things down, 10% style, or we can actually just pause things, and that has triggered the animation, and now we can start to kind of scrub through it. As you might debug any other kind of CS animation, we're able to do so even in this View Transitions API, just because that's all we're dealing with. And what we can actually see as well is inside the actual document itself, we have this view transition and the header, the footer, and the root. So you can actually play with those as well whilst that animation is paused. Let's move it back to 100%, play it through, unpause it, and it's done. We also get a nice screenshot version of it as well. It's cool. So debugging is kind of nice. It's just CSS animations. Having said that, CSS animations aren't necessarily easy, but it's something that we have been learning for a while, and we now can achieve that through page transitions. There are, of course, some important things, extra things to note that I think is important for this. If you have objects that are named and are kind of entering or exiting a page, that is, there isn't, as you move between pages, there isn't a corresponding element with the same name. You can do kind of entrance or exit animations for them using the only child pseudo selector. So if you are using the view transition new, the only child will be an entrance animation. That is, there wasn't previously one on the page and now there is. And then if you have the view transition old only child, that's an exit animation. That is, I was previously on the page and now I'm not. So that's cool. And then very importantly is accessibility on this. Alistair also covered this with animation as well. If you have somebody that would prefer reduced motion, then taking those animations off seems sensible. It prefers reduced motion, so you could work to do a quicker or snappier animation, but this is the easiest one to fit on the slide. There is more to this, of course. There's much more detail, which I don't have time to go into, and I know I'm in the way of Battledex, Pizza, and Karaoke, and Pub Quiz. So I fully recommend the article by Jake Archibald on the Chrome developer blog, Smooth and Simple Transitions with the View Transitions API. These slides are published, so you'll be able to get the links out of that afterwards. Browser support is, of course, interesting. So with this single-page animation stuff, we have it in basically Chromium browsers, so that is Chrome, Edge, and Opera. And also, I believe Samsung Internet. I don't have an Android phone to check that on, but Can I Use was actually weirdly odd about whether Samsung actually supports this or not. I think so, but so it's all Chromium stuff. But according to Can I Use, globally that's 65% of people, so pretty good support. And then this goes well with most single-page application frameworks, not my replace inner HTML framework that we've seen here, but there are different bits available in many different frameworks to hook into that rendering process. I believe Angular has just brought support out for it in Angular 17, I think that's new. You can do it in Svelte, you can do it in Astro. They have some fancy extra stuff, which I'll probably touch on a bit later. And so you can hook into these transitions, do your transitions in CSS, and not have to worry about controlling that state between different views that you would have had to before if you wanted to do this. Now, of course, one final thing, of course, is progressive enhancement. We've mentioned that a couple of times today. This is something you can, of course, progressively enhance. Like, you definitely don't want to wrap all of your code around a document start view transition, because if it doesn't exist in the browser, it's going to break everything. So you can simply detect the existence of start view transition and use it if possible. Otherwise, just update as you normally would. There's also more on that in Jake Archibald's article too. But multi-page application transitions is actually the thing I care about the most. I know we've kind of been able to animate and throw things around a page in a single page application forever, and I think this makes it easier to work with and puts it more into the world of CSS. But when we can do this over multi-pages, when we can do this over a page load, I think we change the way we might think about things on the web and how we build websites or web applications. So multi-page transitions effectively work exactly the same, except firstly, they're experimental. This is currently not available in any browser. So you do have to pop into your Chrome flags, because that's the only browser we can do this in right now. Pop into Chrome flags, find those view transitions, the view transition API for navigations in this case, and check that. And then start surfing the web, surfing all your favorite web developers' sites and seeing if they've turned them on, see if they've implemented something. And then actually making a transition happen is even easier in multi-page applications. All you need is a meta tag, funnily enough, very much the same as Internet Explorer's version. If you use the meta tag with view transition as a name, the content is same origin, and currently this does only work if you are moving between pages on the same origin, although I believe there is work going on into whether this is something that can work cross-origin for you, for people. But right now, this is the meta tag you need, and it will work on that same domain, on that same origin. And as soon as you put that into place, you get the same existence. So I have a second multi-page application over here, which just has the same 2 pages, but they're on different pages. It's a very tiny URL bar up there, but it is changing between the 2 pages. And currently, just a regular transition, like a jarring flash. So if I save our meta tag, refresh the page. And now this is actually using the same CSS in the background. We get the same exact effect as we saw in the single page application, but we are going between 2 different pages right now. I think that's cool. Somebody else does as well. It is cool. It's cool, and I think it's the future of web development. I think it's the future of a lot of web development that we've put into the world of JavaScript already. As I said before, I know it's somewhat flippant to say that we just take over navigation in a web application because we want to stop things flashing between pages. But I don't think it's entirely wrong. We do want to create nice experiences where we can guide people around a page, where we can put emphasis on things by making these transitions happen. But what we need to consider, I think, is that difference between a website and a web application. I think for a long time now, we've kind of decided that difference is based on the technology that we use. If we use something that is indeed the framework that kind of takes over the page, we have ourselves a web application, regardless of the way that we expect people to use or interact with it. If we're building an entire single-page dashboard with an amount of interactivity, if it's a page that you're logged into for 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours because it's a shop, because it's a call center, because it's a social media application, then sure, it's a web application, and it needs to do a lot more. But if we are building content-side shops, e-commerce definitely stands out to me as something that 100% does not need to be inside a big old JavaScript framework, but does want to give a good feeling, give an experience as you navigate around it, then we can make that a website. We can make it something that doesn't require JavaScript to control the majority of its functions. And when we do that, if we can build these animations, which are, for the most part, in CSS as well, we actually give our sites the best chance of working well. We've talked about performance and not necessarily and sending small pages over the wire so that it will work for everybody. And if we are not sending enormous chunks of JavaScript, if we can just send HTML and CSS and still get a great experience, then we should. We've talked about creativity of this. And again, like that experience of getting on a website and navigating around it, making a nice experience is important to us, but we can do so with much less stuff. When JavaScript breaks, it breaks horribly, but when CSS and HTML break, the browser makes up for it, and you still get an experience. And so if we do this in CSS and HTML, then we build a more resilient web for ourselves. And so we can get exciting transitions like blinds, the Internet Explorer. What about the... I wanted to really dig into Houdini and shaders and things like that to see what we could actually make these happen. But it turns out I'm terrible at graphics. But I have implemented blinds. So we'll see that in a second. We can get these exciting transitions, but we can... in fact, there's a lot we can do with it. And the most fun part I've had with this talk has indeed been exploring the various things that people have done with it, as well as the various experiences I've built. So this is a quick, I believe this was Adi Osmani put this together, a nice gallery of, I presume, automatically generated images here. But it's a multi-page application works beautifully, has lovely interactions, but we are changing page each time. It's entirely possible. This was built in Astro. This one is also built in Astro. It's a music library. The most incredible thing about this one is that it is built as a multi-page application. It can play music. I don't have the audio on, and it doesn't matter because this is free music. It's not The Killers. But if you navigate back to the library, it remains playing at the bottom of the... It's right at the bottom of the screen there, but it remains playing there. Oh, it's playing out my laptop. Cool. This one is built as a multi-page application in Astro, but actually uses their sort of view transitions, I want to say polyfill of sorts. It turns out that this is actually powered by JavaScript under the hood. It uses the single-page application version of view transitions, and just has a very lightweight sort of PJAX or turbo links style. Make a full request for the entire page and just replace the body underneath. But it works very nice, and that JavaScript is less than 5K, I believe. So if that's the sort of thing you're interested in, because then it allows you to kind of have this bottom island here, which continues to play and continues to maintain that state. And you just have to treat it as a multi-page application, pointing out just an island that will have to transfer across. And then this is the fun I had in building a whole bunch of unnecessary view transitions for the web. And so you've seen a bunch of them in the slides already, where you can sort of slide things in. This I've just put online this afternoon. And we'll show you a bunch of fun things like sliding in and up. And you can see I've fixed the header in place and the footer in place. And then it got a bit more fun with sliding things over. That's kind of making the background fall away in the back whilst the other one comes up top of it, like that. I did do blinds, of course. It turns out I learned quite a lot about CSS, modern CSS in this, from Arthur Bien. He had a bunch of fancy reveal animations using CSS masks. And so like at the top of the page here, we actually use app property syntax, which defines a property and how it is defined so that you can then animate it. And then we use a mask image with a repeating linear gradient, which we make progressively smaller to do the blinds. Again, this is all online, so I don't want to bore you too much with the code. My other favorite one's becoming wipe. Yes. Yes, we can bake bad movie transitions in our websites now. Again, this is a mask image with a linear gradient and a position. And that can also be done in a spiral wipe, which I really like. Conic gradient, right? Very nice. And then I learned some other things about clip paths. CSS clip paths are quite incredible. So it's a whole, build it out of a circle from the inside. That's based on a bunch of transitions that Adam Argyle published, which I just adapted for this full-page transition. And I like scaling as well. It just comes towards you. Whole bunch of things. And so that's under my GitHub. It's on philnash.github.io/unnecessary view transitions. If you do want to check that out, I will share links to that later as well. But ultimately, what I think is we're getting a lot from the platform these days, including things like scroll animations, as Alistair covered, which are allowing us to make better decisions as to whether to use JavaScript or not for something. I'm never saying that JavaScript is always the wrong decision. Of course not. I've been a JavaScript developer for almost 20 years. It's horrifying. But what we need to do is make the right choices, take advantage of the platform that we have and the new features that the platform are giving us to decide whether we need the interactivity of a full-blown framework, or whether we can actually exist in a world where we put JavaScript in small places where it's needed and use CSS to transition between that. I'd like to see a web, as we go through the coming year, start to reduce its reliance on JavaScript, start to see the amount of JavaScript that we ship as websites peak and come down, particularly in the public web. Again, I understand if you're on a dashboard behind a login page, that's something that's going to stay logged into something, we're fine shipping a load of JavaScript the one time. But the public web, which you can hit from a search result, which you can hit from anywhere, let's think about the performance. Let's think about the people receiving those web pages. Let's build them as resilient as we can. And let's build a little bit more fun into them as well. Before I say thank you, I just wanted to point out that this entire slide has also been a bunch of multi-page transitions. And indeed, there is some JavaScript involved in it, but the only JavaScript is these 13 lines, which hook up 2 hidden links to the keys on my keyboard, which can also work with a clicker. So we can build an entire slide deck. I wouldn't recommend it, but we can build an entire slide deck with this too. That was the wrong choice, but I trust in you to make the right choices as we go forward with this. One final point I forget to mention is that it's a progressive enhancement, as always. This is a meta tag which we can add to a page, and some CSS that will get ignored if it doesn't work. And so there's no difficulty in trying and playing with it now. Play with it on your personal sites, see what you can do with your work sites, and let's make the right choice for the future. And let's build less JavaScript when we don't need it, and more when we do, I guess. That's the Vue Transitions API. I'd love to see what you build with it. Again, share it with me as well. I'd love to see. Again, my name's Sonash. Thank you so much.